Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is Multifamily Chronicles, and I'm your host, Adrian Danila. This is episode number 12. Today, we have as a guest, Stephanie Anderson. Stephanie is the Senior Director of Communication and Social Media for Grace Hill. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you so much for having me.
Stephanie, let's start by, for the very few, like a handful of people that don't know you yet, right? From social media, from LinkedIn, from your previous activity with the National Apartment Association. Let's share a little bit about yourself, about your background, things that you're passionate about, everything that you might want to share with our audience.
Okay, let's see if I can condense this down. When people always ask me about myself, it's actually harder to talk about yourself than some people think it is. So I'll do my best here. I'm actually a working mom of three. I have been in the apartment industry, serving the industry for the past 16 years. I started off, like many of our viewers, part-time leasing consultant in the industry with no real intention to stay here. But in fact, found that I loved it and it was such a great career opportunity. And I worked my way up, kind of climbed that corporate ladder and held a multitude of roles, just from manager, regional manager, and director roles. I made the transition many years ago to the nonprofit world, working on the association side for the National Apartment Association. And that was such a rewarding job to be able to give back to the membership and offer, my expertise on a more national level, and really just speaking with members and finding out things like what keeps them up at night and finding solutions to the challenges that they were having. And then a year ago, I joined the team over at Grace Hill and have now, I can't believe it's been a year, honestly, it's gone by really fast. And now I am focused on content, communication, social media, really just helping Grace Hill to move forward, stay on top of trends, and to give back to our clients and potential clients answers and help with what they need to better perform their teams.
Stephanie, you have such outstanding career in our industry, and you're very high profile. You're one of our industry influencers, right? For someone that pretty much never thought about making a career out of this industry, right? It's such a remarkable thing, and stories like yours are all over the place. I've seen. Okay, I will say myself. I started as a groundskeeper, right, and worked my way up to regional director positions. I know of leasing agents, like CEO of companies that started and president of companies that started as a leasing agents, like at the very bottom, or even groundskeepers. So many amazing stories, right? And something comes to mind, right? How can we use the power of personal stories, right, in our industry to promote our industry to others that never heard of us as an industry, were never heard of us as a possible career, that you could make a career out of this, or you could actually have a career path, start at a very entry level and make the best of it, right? Become like a leader in a certain organization.
Storytelling is so huge in general because it allows people to hear things that resonate with them, that provide them information to better themselves and to motivate them to do more. What I love about storytelling in our industry is that if you have not worked in our industry before, you don't quite understand it. In fact, when I used to tell my husband before we were married about 15 years ago, we would sit at the dinner table together and I would tell him stories about life on site. And he would just kind of chuckle a little bit and roll his eyes sometimes. And I do think he thought I was being dramatic. And, at the end of the day, because he would always say, it's just leasing apartments, like how hard can it be? And that has always stuck with me through the years because he has the same, feedback that anyone else who had never worked in the industry had. You can't truly understand until you've been in those shoes and you've experienced it. So storytelling helps to, tell our stories of what we've experienced to other people. But what's really, truly inspiring to me is when we talk about stories like what you just said, when you started as a groundskeeper, you came to the US and how you grew through the industry. How many industries are out there where we can say it wasn't just a one-off? It wasn't just that person had that that special spark. It was this person came into this industry with little to no formalized education. So we don't require college educations. We don't require any formalized training or certifications. Those are great if you have them, whether it's on the maintenance side or on the office side or leadership side, but they are not required because the companies in this industry are going to give you the opportunity to learn through their internal training programs, through programs like NAA and IRAM, and you're able to take that information and apply it with your real life working experience, and then you're able to grow in the industry. So sure, we do see those cases where leadership is brought in from other industries, and that's okay because that helps keep us on our toes and to see, better think about ways to do things. But ultimately, when you look at so many leaders in the industry, I just love the stories of this person started at the bottom, entry-level position, and now they're president of a company, they're CEO of a company, and it just shows that anybody can do it if that's what you want. Now, there's people who are still serving in similar roles than where they started because that is where their true passion is. And that to me is also rock star status because there's no, the ladder I talked about earlier that I was climbing, I kind of giggle when I always say it because not everybody's ladder is lateral. There's a lot of horizontal movement that makes sense and allows people to do what they love to do and companies to embrace that. And so this is the only industry that I know of that allows so much growth and opportunity and investing back in their people.
Something that you said a while back when we had a conversation previously was that success is not the same for everybody. It was on a webinar, and that kind of stuck with me, right? Because I was trying to, say things about success, right? And I was basically saying things about success the way I see it, right? But it doesn't mean that what I see as success, everybody else is or should, right? Everybody gauges or envisions success differently. And like you very well said, very well pointed out, it's not necessary that you have to start from the bottom and go all the way up to the top. You could be the very best leasing agent that could be out there and still be very passionate about the industry and do the same thing 20 years or 30 years later. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. As long as what you do is rewarding for his meaningful work, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, and the other point that you made, which is super important, right? Formal education, no formal education is necessary. In my previous life, before coming to United States and before coming into the industry, I didn't have any type of maintenance related background. So I basically started, at zero. Of course, I went to some classes, I got some certifications along the way, but they're not a must in order for an individual, for a professional to advance in our industry. Like literally, you could be the best that you could be, go all the way up to the top without actually having to end up paying $50,000 or $100,000 in school loans, right? So that's another advantage too. When you think about, I'm just thinking about my wife works in for the education system, right? She's in a public system, and she tells me how much does it cost for someone to become a teacher, how much they owe in student debt, and there's significant numbers, right? And if you compare that with our industry, like we have a huge advantage, right? So my question always was, how do we sell that, right? So what do you think of a few ways for us to better advertise, to better make it known out there that this is exactly the type of opportunities that we have, right? You don't have to go to school and spend $100,000 or $50,000 in education before becoming a manager or a regional manager in our industry.
It always goes back to me, Adrian, that the old school quote of you don't know what you don't know. And I think that our industry lacks that knowledge in terms of anyone outside of it. We all know what the industry's like. We've acknowledged that, and we talk about how cool it is and there's so much opportunity, but it is hard to get that message out to others who don't know. And some of that really comes down to regional or locally, because depending on where your area is, you may not be saturated with apartment communities. You may have never lived in an apartment. So those things have probably never even crossed many persons' minds. What I love is a lot of the initiatives that we're seeing right now from companies and nonprofit organizations are getting into high schools and technical schools and colleges. And that's where they're having those ground level conversations to say, hey, this is a career opportunity. Think back to like a career day that you ever experienced or your kids ever experienced. No one shows up for property management. Now the closest you probably get is a real estate agent, but that's so clearly different from what we do. Yeah, there's some crossover, but it's a completely different path. And in fact, real estate agents don't make sense to everybody because of the startup cost that's associated with it, right? In terms of what you have to have in the bank to be able to start your business, to do things, knowing you're not going to get a paycheck for a while. Well, immediately that could be a turnoff for many people who don't have that financial stability. So it's hard to say, okay, well, they're represented through a real estate agent or even a developer because we are so different from that. So really being able to get into the schools and have those conversations and painting a picture for them of what kind of career this is like. I think that really is kind of the starting point. A lot of people in the industry have had conversations recently about things like signing day. I know local apartment associations have done this. My high school that I graduated from does this now every year. And it's a really big thing of don't just make a big deal about those who are going to college, make a big deal about those who are going straight into the workforce or those who have decided to go to alternate schools or provide different types of education, because it allows them to know that there's all these different avenues and no one's going to shun them if they do something versus the traditional norm of, university, college.
I absolutely love the fact that there's initiatives out there that you just shared, right? And I hope that they will multiply. They will multiply, and it has to start. I'm also a very firm believer that if we want to change, then the change has to start with us, right? We have to become the change. We have to drive the change. So whether it's us as an industry, whether it's us as professionals, as individuals, we have to start to get the word out. There's a number that I heard about a week ago. I was at a meeting with some executives in Atlanta market, and one of the numbers that was mentioned right there, I believe it was 38% of all site positions are currently vacant. 38%. That's an unbelievable number. That's an unbelievable number. So when you're thinking about, you already start with like 38% vacancy, right? And you have COVID. Sometimes people get sick. Their families might be affected by COVID or other things. It's not just COVID out there in the world. Personal family situations, and you add that on top of the labor shortages, like you end up basically having to run entire properties with a skeleton crew. So we desperately need this type of initiatives, and I hope that people out there, executives, are hearing it. And I'm sure that for individuals, for professionals like you will be more than happy to participate in something like that, to donate your time and actually be, like you have been for years, a cheerleader for the industry, just speaking on behalf of the industry, and you have done a fantastic job at it. So hopefully we will see that started very soon at a higher level than it is currently.
Thank you. When you get a platform like you and I have, it's so important to do good with that platform. And, I always hope to be and continue to be that voice for people in the industry that can't necessarily speak for themselves. And maybe they can't speak for themselves because they have fear of losing their job or, working for that company. Maybe they just don't think that it's going to do any good, or maybe, they just don't have the right words to say. And for us as leaders in the industry to be able to point out policies and procedures and say, hey, that was fine 10 years ago. It doesn't make sense anymore. I think it's really important. And I think we have to continue to bring light to issues that are happening all around us, both in our industry and inside the world in general, and bring viable solutions, right? So pinpoint what the problems are and then start throwing out solutions, because that's how we're going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely love it, right? Most people are able to identify that there's issues, right? When there's issues, some of them are able to actually describe the issue, what the issue is. But then when it comes to the next part, to how do we identify, create solutions for those challenges, a lot of times that part is missing, or maybe the execution, that's the next one after it. Even if we describe and we find solutions, we put them on paper, executing, it's the part that's missing. And it's not necessarily industry related thing. I think it's really a human nature, right? Because it's going through all those steps from A to to Z to see it to see through completion. It's difficult. It's not for everybody, but hopefully we'll get better at that as industry, right?
That's all we can do. And I think, networking and sharing ideas is where that is just critical. It's no need in all of us making the same mistakes twice. So when we can learn from each other and know what they're doing that's working and what's not doing that's working, and how we work together to make that better, I mean, that's really key here.
Absolutely. Completely agree, Stephanie. Now, I like to talk a little bit about the thing that I think most of us are losing sleep over, right? Which is the topic of the Great Resignation. And I heard someone else very greatly, saying that this is actually the great opportunity, right? Because when there's a challenge, there's also so much opportunity, and the opportunity comes from overcoming the challenge. So maybe a little bit of what do you think? Like, how do you think we got here, right? How do you think we got here into this point where we have a massive number of people just resigning, right? Not being happy at their current workplace, and then where do we go from here? How do we manage this phenomenon? And I also wanted to say, as a matter of personal opinion, is that what we're seeing right now, it's really just the beginning. If we're really sitting and hoping that things will go back to the normal, by normal understanding the situation that was pre-COVID, I honestly don't think that it will. I think this is here to stay. It's a change, a significant shift in change in the way people are seeing. They're looking at work and their careers versus their life. What are your thoughts?
I have so many thoughts here. I love that you've termed it the great opportunity, because the great resignation, the great reshuffle, and the great opportunity are kind of like the three big ones that we're hearing right now. And it's sort of like when you look at your glass, is it half full or half empty? We can look at the pandemic that we've been through the past 2 years, and we could be fully negative about it, or we could say, okay, this is what was born from this. These are the opportunities that came from it. And I do try to look at things in a more positive light. And so I think that the great resignation is that opportunity, that great opportunity to be better and do better. I think that if we're just being completely honest here, this has been brewing for a while. So, we didn't wake up overnight and necessarily as employees say, today's the day. Today's the day I'm going to take back control. I am going to dictate how my day goes and how my employer treats me and what I do for my job duties and et cetera. I mean, maybe self-consciously we say that, but it certainly didn't perpetuate into an overnight phenomenon. In reality, this pandemic has really helped push us forward in finding more joy and living with greater purpose. And that has translated into the workforce. When we think about the workplace, there's always been a need for more inclusive workplaces pre-pandemic. The typical, Monday through Friday, right, which is not even our industry because we're a 24/7, 365 industry. But let's just make it simplistic here. If we're talking about a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 job, even that has not been, an inclusive workplace to be. Those who are parents, and all of the issues with childcare nowadays across the country, from schools and daycares closing and the cost increasing significantly, that has put a burden on so many caregivers, whether you're taking care of ailing parents or taking care of someone who has, fallen victim from COVID in the pandemic. There's all of these different things that have revolved around the force to make more adjustments to that more flexible workplace. And, I think that this is the opportunity as employers to say, how are we going to redo things? Does it make sense for John to sit at his desk 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, if he could do his job in a different set of hours that would allow him to have more work-life balance? So, it makes sense. I always talk about, finding core business hours. So what are your core business hours? What are the times that your residents need you the most? What are the times that your staff is most productive? What are the times that prospective residents are most likely to call and tour? That's going to kind of vary from property to property and of course regionally. But think about that. Let's say that that time is a 10 to 3. Well, John can be there from 10 to 3, but then where does he pick up his other hours to still get in his 8 hours a day? Well, allowing him to dictate what that means. Does he come in 2 hours early so he can leave 2 hours early? Does he take a longer lunch break? What does that look like to help them find balance? And it brings into the question of flexibility, because remote work's great, right? And we hear that constantly, but that's not necessarily 100% realistic for our industry. Maybe for positions in the corporate level, but not necessarily for the on-site and maintenance teams. But we can do other things that make it still as enjoyable for them, but we do have to rethink what that looks like. And yes, executives, that's going to cause you to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to throw out that policy and procedure manual for a moment and think about how your company best operates. And let me tell you, when you have happy employees, you're going to have a better bottom line. Your residents are going to be happier. Your owners are going to be happier. You're going to have more cash in the bank. It just makes sense. It's like the easiest equation ever. So now we have to ask our employees outside of that flexibility, because we can control that. Ask them this simple question, Adrian. What do you love most about your job? And let them think about that. Ask them, because you love that about your job, what do you want to do more of? Is it that thing that, or maybe it's a couple of things? And then find them opportunities to do just that. And that can be tricky, because you're going to have opportunities where people are going to say they still have to do the mundane paperwork. Well, yes, that's life. They're still going to have to go pick up the trash on the property. Yep, we got to have a beautiful curb appeal. There's always going to be things about a job, that are going to be less appealing. But all of that is overlooked when you have that purpose, when you have that joy in what you do day in and day out. And I just want more companies and leaders within the companies to ask those questions to their employees and allow them to do what they love to do most.
I love that you said, hey, go back to them and ask them, right? Instead, either assuming or creating a blanket, or set of rules to where you say, this is how we always have done, or how we decided things are going to be done for a certain position. Sometimes completely ignoring talents that our associates, our team members are bringing to the table. And I really think it's a shame. What that actually does, if the person it's not in a position where they could actually use those qualities to make a difference, they're going to start to look for a different place that is going to allow them to exhibit and make a difference. Meaningful work, I think, it's probably the most underrated thing that's in a society today. I've done several, and I've read several surveys on LinkedIn alone about what's the most important, and what really comes up top all the time is pay, and that's completely understandable. It's completely understandable because, as we all know, inflation, which is completely through the roof this year and last year, but we always have inflation, not at this rate. And when a company is offering only 3 to 4%, raise, a lot of times that doesn't even really cover the inflation. So basically, you end up with more paper or a higher number in a bank, but in reality, that number that you're getting, it's not buying, is buying less than you used to buy last year. So in all reality, what you end up doing is making less, having less buying power. And the only way to increase buying power is to go and look for another job with another company. And believe it or not, it's very often that I'm reading about situations and cases where employees left, they went to do the same job for a different company, and right at the door, they got 30 to 60% increase in their wages. I mean, that's incredible, right? So when you have that type of incentive, right, and you have a choice to make, right, even if you're happy at your current work, let's say that you're finding a meaningful work and everything, and you're truly happy with leadership, with the work environment and everything, and you know that out there's opportunities for you to make 30, 40, 50, 60% more than you currently are. You also thinking about yourself, and you also think about the future, right, the family. You also think about, hey, it's gonna come a time when I have to retire, right? And would I get to retire at this rate, or would I have to work myself until I'll be in my 70s or 80s because I could never retire, afford to retire? Or every year or every other year I look for opportunity outside of my current company, go take that, get an increase that's significantly more than what I'm typically getting year by year, and maybe it will definitely give me a way better chance to retire. So when it comes to retention, shouldn't companies really consider that? And there's another aspect to it, right? There's another aspect. The aspect is, okay, we're offering hiring bonuses. Let's say, I'm seeing anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000, and not for executive positions. I'm talking about maintenance technicians. So when you as a company, you go out there and you say, if you're a maintenance technician and you want to come work for us, we will give you a bonus, a signing bonus of $5,000, right? Even if it's $1,000. My question to you as an employer is, what do you do for your current employer or employee to feel valuable, right? So we tend to go out there and spend money, resources on recruiting and everything because we're desperate. We need people desperately, right? So we'll pay whatever it takes to get people in. But then the question is, okay, while we're doing that, are we really taking care of our current employees, our current associates, just the same as we would for the ones that we're trying to bring in? What are your thoughts on this?
I think we could compare this to resident versus prospective resident too. We always go back to putting more energy, time, and money into filling that void, whether that void is a vacancy of apartment or that void is a vacancy of an employee for a position. So we throw out money. We say, what's going to be the quickest to get heads on beds or a warm body in a seat? That's going to be, enticing, put out there. Let's do a sign-on bonus. And the problem is, I don't have any issue with sign-on bonuses because I think that they're an excellent way to gauge people. But let's be honest, you're throwing money in the wind if you have a crap culture at your company and you have done a sign-on bonus, because after that 90 days and they get that sign-on bonus or whatever that stipulation is, they're already going to know at that point that that company wasn't good and they're going to leave. But that's a whole nother conversation. But what are you doing for your current employees? Too many companies right now aren't doing anything. When you talked about that minimal 3 to 5% raise, I'm going to tell you right now, there are companies out there that have not given any raises in 2 years now because of the pandemic. There have been companies that have had to cut wages because of it. And then others that are just not giving, they're holding steady at their pay. And we're asking people to do twice the amount of work they've done in the past, to reevaluate everything they've done or thought that they knew because of the changing environment. And then we say, well, we appreciate all of that hard work. Here's a pizza party for you, or here's lunch on us today. And we're going to give that sign-on bonus to, those vacant maintenance positions, but we're not going to give you anything. And, there was a company, I'm not going to mention the name, but this company last year, I thought what they did was really, really cool. They actually were really successful after bouncing back from the pandemic. And they decided to give their employees a higher bonus. They decided to increase the percentage because they realized not only giving them raises was important and sign-on bonuses and things like that, but they decided, how do we take care of the employees that have been here with us, the loyal ones that have stuck by us, that have done all this extra work throughout this time? And because the company was successful, why are we just pocketing that as ownership and investors? Why instead are we not, giving some of that money back to the employees? And that's what they did in the form of an annual bonus for them. And that was huge. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that when companies say, you do for me and I do back for you.
this is such a great example, right? And at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be, okay, well, we're gonna make I guess, less, less profits. When you factor in the cost of employee turnover, the cost of losing employees, because you're not investing in them staying, right? Doing
Right.
making an investment, like you said, paying them a higher bonus, treating them right, and just show the appreciation, like really show the appreciation. What is the cost of not doing that, right? Because everything comes with a cost. And I think we're really great at about sticking to budgeted numbers, but when it comes to this other cost, with so much waste that we see from employee turnover, that turns into more money spent on site, more money on the contractors, a longer response time when it comes to maintenance. Okay, in particular, unhappy residents that are looking to go and move out, go live somewhere else. That's also cost. Why are we not tracking those numbers, quantify, and say, well, it really makes sense that we will do this upfront, take care of our own, and those expenses and those losses are going to be cut down the road, and we actually might end up with a better culture and with more people wanting to come and work for us, versus just saying, no, we're not paying because it's not budgeted. And then everything else, all that other waste that I just mentioned, just pretty much overlooked. It's like it never existed. Oh, it's the market, right? So I never really understood that. So
When you were saying that, it made me think of, underwriting. When a company wants to purchase a property, or investors want to, purchase a property, you think about the underwriting and how you can cut cost in terms of what makes best sense. And payroll tends to be a quick cost of how can we do it with less? You look at the age old rule of one maintenance person per 100 units. They don't take into consideration that the property is 56 years old, and or it has a boiler, or, things that are going to take more than if the property was, 6 months old and still under warranty. That's not to say that I don't believe in that 1 per 100 period, but that they just don't kind of think about all these different avenues, and where it's not a one size fits all. And I think with that underwriting is where they cut corners so much. And then that becomes a standard of, okay, we're going to pay maintenance technicians $13 an hour, even though we need them to have this certain level of experience. That's the lowest price that we could bring somebody in entry level and expect them to do a lot of work. And then we'll get them certified along the way, because they look for that lowest number. Now, that's not to say that that couldn't be a particular situation where that needed to happen for an investment opportunity, but that shouldn't be after the book's closed. That should be reevaluated immediately. And the fact of the matter is, the conversation always comes up about salaries. That is not a one-time thing. If you as a company or you as a leader, you have to reevaluate salaries constantly. You have to look at the market. There are a lot of great reports out there. CEL and Associates produces theirs annually. NAA, some of the local apartment associations, there's so many that have their reports out there that you can look at both locally, regionally, and nationally to see where you fall. Then you look at whatever the median pay is, right? If we're looking at this type of asset, this class of asset in this particular area, or we now need to add on experience. Are you hiring someone fresh out the gate with zero experience, or do they have 15 years experience in the business? Because you need to pay for that experience that comes with it. And then the other thing I always tell people to think about with pay too is you need to take it a step further. It's sort of job offers. This always kind of makes me chuckle a little bit. You'll ask somebody what they make, and most people are really, really honest. I find throughout my years, most of the time people aren't confident enough to say, I want to make $100,000 a year. Instead, they go back and they say, well, I make 85,000 currently, and then I get these bonuses, which, by the way, I totally appreciate that honesty. But what people hear when they say that is, oh, well, if they only make that, I could technically give them a job for like $87,000. It's a small little increase from what they are. We're saving a ton because we had budgeted a lot more. And it's like, why would you do that when they're going to realize after 6 months that you underpaid them? And then they're either going to switch to a job for 50 cents more an hour, or they're going to sit there and be miserable or do less work for you because they feel like they're underpaid. Why do we not think of, oh my gosh, we could give this person a $15,000 a year raise And we're going to show them right off the bat that we believe in you. We value you more than your own organization values you. And now they're going to want to show up to work every day and give that much more.
You're bringing some excellent points, Stephanie. I wanted to talk a little bit, say a few things about what you just mentioned, right? Underpaying someone, knowing that they don't necessarily know how to present, how to sell themselves, right? And saying, oh, we just saved so much, we could pay like 100,000, and we got away with 87. So it's like we're saving $13,000. Well, here's the deal: there are no secrets. Like, there are no secrets anymore. Everything's public, believe it or not. Like, yes. if you really want to live with your own ideology about how people, how people have access to information or don't, let me tell you, don't. Okay, because everything's out there. Like, there are no secrets anymore. It's not that the person will find out about it, is that when they will find out about it. And then when they find out about it, you're going to be in this situation, right? It's just like a business deal. A business deal, in order to work, it has to be beneficial for both sides. If it's just beneficial for one of the sides, it's not going to work on a long run. It might be like a quick gain at the beginning to begin with and say, I got this great deal, right? How many times did we not get that vendor that came in and beat it out, killed everybody with pricing? Came at a bottom line pricing, and then when it comes to doing the work, like they were not able to perform the work, where the quality of the work was so horrible, that was completely unacceptable. You're in a lose-lose situation, right? So look at things, realistically and long-term. Really, don't just look at short-term. It's very short-sighted to look at it and say, hey, I saved myself, I hired this person for so much less, because at the end of the day, it's not gonna be a gain. I think you're gonna be losing down the road more than you just saved or perceived saved, right? Because if you get someone for 13,000, let's say I use this number less a year, that's a little over $1,000 a month gross. And when you lose that person down the road, like 2 or 3 or 6 months down the road, did you really save this money? How much is it gonna cost you to go through the process again and hire a new person, which probably you're gonna hire at an even higher rate than 100,000 that you would have paid to begin with? And then also, what does that do to your reputation as a company? Because let me tell you something: if I'm a service manager, okay, and I live in Atlanta, and I look for service manager opportunities, I'm gonna look on Indeed every day. It's on my phone. I just type in service manager, all openings are showing up, right? And I'm interested in let's say, certain community. Like, I know it's a newer community, it's probably less work, it's in a great part of the city. I like to be the service manager right there. And I just kind of keep an eye on things, right? So the opportunity comes up, I go apply. They wouldn't pick me. But then 2 months later, the opportunity comes up again on Indeed, and it keeps coming up, right? So what does that tell the prospects, the potential candidates, right? Do they really want to be themselves in that situation? Do they really want to work for that particular complex or for that particular company when the same position comes available every 6 months or every 3 months? Is that really worth the perceived saving that we thought we're gonna have to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You're right. And perception is reality. So even though intentions may be good, we know that what people perceive from that particular situation is going to be way more powerful. When you were talking, I was thinking about, again, the whole, do you give raises? Do you not? Do you pay people more when they're doing a great job? Or do you say, well, I already paid them enough, they're supposed to be doing that whole like meets expectations versus exceeds expectations and so forth. But yet, how many times do owners and operators look at financial statements and don't bat an eye to your uncontrollable expenses, or even your contracted amounts that we know go up annually, everything from trash collection. We know that it's going to go up. In fact, it's gone up significantly since the pandemic. But even before, you knew that you were getting a 3 to 5% increase on that. But yet you got to pay that because we have to have trash collection. We have to. Residents have to have a place to dispose of their trash. We have to have a clean community. So we have to have somebody pick it up, yada, yada, yada. But yet we don't place that same value or thought process on the amazing employees that work for you, that are there day in and day out, building relationships with your residents, selling the property, maintaining the property. That to me is like mind blowing, that it's a culture. It is a culture that starts from the top in terms of we just write people off because, that is different than what we have to pay year over year for expenses. And I know you're shaking your head because you know it. And, utilities go up. I mean, oh my gosh, the price of sewer in most areas now is either the same as water or double the cost of what water is, which is always mind-boggling. And yet we still pay that. But an employee who's a great employee that we could possibly lose to a competitor because we can't offer them more competitive pay or benefits, well, there's really no room in the budget for that.
Stephanie, this is going incredibly incredibly well, and I wanted to say there's just so much. I haven't even started on the topics that I really want to discuss with you, just because all the points that you made were so important. There are also points that I'm super passionate about, and I will say one that I would like to touch in a future conversation, right? If you would like to. If you'd like to join me for another episode, will be the underwriting part for the deals. That's a conversation in itself, and I think how is that gonna play down the road with assets that are being purchased currently? I think it's very it's alarming. I'm gonna use the word alarming because I'm seeing like that itself possibly creating a bubble down the road. Do you agree?
Agreed.
That could, yes. So I like to have that maybe as a starting point of a future conversation. Obviously, if you would if you'd like to join me for another episode. Unfortunately, we're about to be out of time right here. In closing, Stephanie, a few final thoughts for the audience.
I always like to leave everybody with just a little bit of extra wisdom and thoughts, Stephanie-isms, I guess, as we'll talk. I want to leave you with this today. I think that it's important for us to focus on the amazing things we have ahead of us. And it's easy for us to get into a negative space, especially after the conversation we just had in terms of, some leadership and some culture or toxic culture issues that we need to fix. But there's always amazing opportunity, as you mentioned before, Adrian, in terms of what we can do and what we do have control over. And you have control over every day to have a positive attitude. And I want you to just not focus so much on what you have to do. And instead, I want you to truly be grateful for what you get to do. And I think that that's going to be the first step in how we're going to find more joy in 2022. And I think that we're going to continue to work on all these other issues, and we're going to make a difference doing those. But really the impact starts with each individual and what they get to do each and every day. And I just thank you all for joining us. And I really just look forward to watching everybody in this industry just do better, be better, and continue to succeed.
Stephanie, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. This was a wonderful conversation. I hope to have you back, really, really soon, because there's really just so much more that I would like to cover with you. There's so many things that, we're both passionate about that, within the 30 something minute conversation, there was just no way we could have covered.
I'm all about a part 2, Adrian. Anything for you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you very much for watching us today. This is Multifamily Chronicles. I'm your host, Adrian Danila, and I hope to see you back soon. Have a great day.